hands gripping the cold metal. Outside, complete darkness. Inside, 23 men waiting for his decision. But Carter was hiding something, a secret that could destroy them all. The USS Phantom had been submerged for 47 hours when the first malfunction occurred. Carter noticed it before anyone else. The subtle flicker in the depth gauge, the way the needle hesitated at 280 meters before plunging deeper. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, young and ambitious, hadn't caught it yet. Good. Carter needed time to think. "Captain, we're receiving encrypted transmission from Pearl Harbor," the radio operator announced, his voice cutting through the mechanical hum of the submarine. Carter moved toward the communications station, each step deliberate. The metal floor beneath his boots felt colder than usual. 20 years in the Navy had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, every fiber of his being was screaming that something was wrong. The message decoded slowly on the small screen. Carter's jaw tightened as he read the words. Target, civilian transport vessel. Morning Star coordinates 34 Pegna, 165 Degua. Directive, neutralize. No survivors. Classification, absolute secrecy. "Sir," Webb stepped closer, trying to read over his shoulder. Carter's hand moved faster than his thoughts, shutting off the screen. "Course adjustment. We're moving to intercept a hostile vessel." But the word civilian burned in his mind like a brand. What he didn't tell Webb, what he couldn't tell anyone yet, was that 3 years ago he'd received a similar order, and he'd followed it. The screams from that sinking ship still woke him at night. But what Carter didn't know yet was that someone on his own crew had already read that message, and that person was preparing to make sure Carter never completed this mission. The Phantom carried 23 souls, but Carter only trusted 3 of them completely. Chief Engineer Rodriguez was a bear of a man with hands that could fix anything mechanical, but trembled when he tried to write letters to his daughter back home. He'd been with Carter for 7 years, through 3 tours and countless near-death experiences. Sonar specialist Tommy Chen was barely 24, fresh-faced and brilliant, able to distinguish between a whale's heartbeat and an enemy submarine at 10 miles. His family had immigrated from China when he was 5. He joined the Navy to prove something, though Carter was never quite sure what. And then there was Petty Officer James Sullivan, the cook who'd served on destroyers before requesting submarine duty. Sullivan never explained why he'd made that request, and Carter had learned not to ask questions when good men volunteered for the worst assignment in the Navy. The rest of the crew was efficient, professional, loyal. Or so Carter had believed. Lieutenant Webb appeared at his side again, clipboard in hand. "Captain, we're approaching the intercept coordinates. Sonar reports surface vessel at bearing 270, range 12,000 yards. Reduce speed to 1/3. Rig for silent running." The order rippled through the submarine. Men moved with practiced precision, speaking in whispers, every unnecessary sound eliminated. The Phantom became a ghost, sliding through the deep Pacific like a predator stalking prey. Carter returned to the periscope, though at this depth it showed nothing but infinite blackness. His reflection stared back at him, a man of 52 who looked 70, gray stubble on his jaw, eyes that had seen too much. "Sir," Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. "I'm picking up something strange." Carter pressed the comm button. "Define strange, Chen." "There's another acoustic signature below the surface vessel, approximately 800 meters depth. It's moving in sync with the Morning Star." The hair on the back of Carter's neck stood up. "What kind of signature?" A pause. Then Chen's voice returned, quieter, uncertain. "It sounds like another submarine, sir, but not one of ours. The propeller signature doesn't match anything in our database." Webb's face went pale. "Could it be Soviet?" Carter's mind raced. If there was a Soviet submarine escorting the Morning Star, that changed everything. It meant the civilian vessel was actually a military transport. It meant his orders made sense. It meant he wouldn't have to live with another massacre on his conscience. It meant his instincts had been wrong. "Battle stations," Carter ordered. "Load tubes 1 and 2. But even as the crew scrambled to their positions, something nagged at him. The timing was too convenient, the discovery too perfect. almost as if someone wanted him to believe there was a military justification for what he was about to do. Rodriguez appeared in the control room, wiping grease from his massive hands. "Captain, we've got a problem with the oxygen recycling system. We're losing efficiency faster than normal. At this rate, we've got maybe 18 hours of breathable air. Can you fix it?" "I can try, but I'll need to shut down secondary systems. We'll be running on backup power in engineering." Carter nodded. "Do it." As Rodriguez disappeared back into the mechanical bowels of the submarine, Webb leaned close. "Sir, if we're going to engage, we should do it now, before that Soviet sub detects us." Carter studied the younger man's face. Webb had been with the Phantom for only 6 months, transferred from a desk job in Washington. He'd requested combat duty, claimed he wanted to prove himself, but there was something in his eyes now, eagerness, maybe even excitement, that Carter found disturbing. "We wait," Carter said quietly. "I want positive identification before we fire." "Sir, with respect, our orders were clear." "I know what our orders were, Lieutenant." Carter's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more authority than a shout. "And I'm still the captain of this vessel. We wait." Webb's jaw clenched, but he nodded and stepped back. Chen's voice crackled over the intercom again. "Captain, the surface vessel is slowing. She's stopping." "All stop," Carter ordered. "Maintain silent running." The Phantom drifted in the darkness, her crew barely breathing, every ear straining for the slightest sound that might betray an enemy's presence. "The other submarine is ascending," Chen reported. "She's rising toward the morning star." Carter's hand moved to the firing solution panel. His fingers hovered over the controls. One decision, one button. 23 men depending on him to make the right choice. And then Chen said something that made Carter's blood run cold. "Sir, I'm picking up voices." "Voices?" "Yes, sir. Underwater communications. They're using a frequency I've never heard before. It's not Soviet. It's not Chinese. It's not anything in our—" Chen's voice broke off. "Chen, report." Silence. "Chen!" The sonar specialist's voice returned, trembling. "Captain, you need to hear this." Carter grabbed the headset, pressed it to his ear. At first, he heard nothing but the usual ocean sounds, the groan of deep water, the distant singing of whales, the whisper of currents. Then, beneath it all, something else, a sound that shouldn't exist. Voices, human voices, speaking English. But they weren't coming from the morning star above. They were coming from the submarine below, and they were repeating the same phrase over and over. "Phantom, turn back. Phantom, turn back. This is a trap. Carter, it's a trap." The headset slipped from Carter's numb fingers. Webb was staring at him. "Sir, what is it? How could another submarine know the Phantom's name? How could they know his name? And why would they warn him? Unless—" Carter's eyes snapped to Webb. "Who else read that transmission from Pearl Harbor?" "Sir, the encrypted message. Who had access to the decryption codes?" Webb's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something cold. "Only you and I, sir. Standard. Protocol." "That's not true." Carter's hand moved slowly toward the sidearm at his hip. "Communications officers have temporary access during active decryption. Radio operator Mitchell saw that message." "Mitchell is at his station, sir. He's been there the whole time." "Then you better pray I'm wrong, Lieutenant." Carter pressed the intercom. "Mitchell, report to the control room immediately." No response. "Mitchell, respond." Still nothing. Carter turned to the nearest crewman. "Daniels, go to communications and bring Mitchell here. Now." The young sailor saluted and disappeared down the corridor. Carter counted the seconds. 10, 20, 30. Daniels' voice came over the intercom. Panicked. "Captain, Mitchell he's dead, sir. Someone cut his throat." The control room erupted. Men shouted, reached for weapons, looked around wildly for the killer among them. Webb pulled his sidearm, pointing it at nothing and everything. "Silence!" Carter's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Instant quiet. 22 men, now that Mitchell was dead, stared at their captain, fear and confusion written on every face. Carter's mind worked frantically. Mitchell had been killed to prevent him from revealing something. But what? that he'd sent that warning, that he'd been in contact with the submarine below, or that he'd discovered something else, something about the mission itself. "Listen to me carefully," Carter said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "We are not firing on anything until I understand what's happening here. Webb, you're confined to quarters. Rodriguez, escort the lieutenant." "I don't think so, Captain." Carter turned. Webb's sidearm was now pointed directly at his chest. "I'm sorry it has to be this way," Webb said, and he actually sounded sorry. "But you were never going to follow those orders, were you? Just like 3 years ago, when you claimed that civilian ship was a military target. Just like you've been lying in every report since then." Carter's hand froze inches from his own weapon. "You know about the Santiago. Everyone in naval intelligence knows about the Santiago, Captain. You murdered 63 civilians, including women and children, because you were told it was carrying weapons. It wasn't. It was carrying refugees from the mainland." The words hit Carter like physical blows. For 3 years, he'd believed the official story, that the Santiago had been a legitimate military target, that the refugees had been a tragic but unavoidable miscalculation. He'd pushed down the nightmares, the guilt, the screams that echoed in his sleep. They'd lied to him. His own government had lied to him. "And now they're asking you to do it again," Webb continued. "The Morning Star is carrying 214 passengers, families, teachers, medical personnel heading to establish a civilian hospital in Okinawa. Not a weapon on board. But she's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and someone very powerful wants her disappeared." "Then why follow the order?" Carter's voice was hoarse. "Why kill Mitchell? Why point that gun at me?" "Because you don't understand what's really happening here." Webb's gun hand didn't waver. "That submarine below us, that's not Soviet. That's American. USS Barracuda, commanded by Captain Richard Thorne. And Thorne has orders identical to ours, except his orders say to sink the Phantom after we destroy the Morning Star." The control room seemed to tilt. "No witnesses," Webb said softly. "No evidence. Just another submarine lost in deep water. Your crew, your ship, your conscience, all buried 300 meters down. Forever." Carter's hand was on his weapon now, but he didn't draw it. Around him, his crew was listening, understanding dawning on their faces. Sullivan's hand moved toward the knife at his belt. Rodriguez's massive fists clenched. Young Chen looked like he might be sick. "So what's your play, Webb?" Carter asked. "You going to shoot me? Take command? Sink that ship full of innocent people?" "No, sir." Webb slowly lowered his weapon. "I'm going to help you stop this, but first, you need to know one more thing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a photograph, slid it across the chart table. Carter picked it up. His hands were shaking. The photograph showed a young woman, maybe 25, standing on a dock. Dark hair, bright smile, holding a medical bag. Behind her, a ship. The name painted on the hull was clearly visible, Morning Star. "Her name is Rebecca Webb," the lieutenant said quietly. "She's my sister. She's a nurse. She's on that ship right now, probably in the mess hall, drinking coffee, talking about the children she's going to help when they reach Okinawa." Carter looked up. "You're committing treason to save your sister." "No, sir. I'm committing treason to save 214 innocent people and 23 submariners who don't deserve to die for following orders that should never have been given." A long silence filled the control room. Then Rodriguez spoke up, his deep voice rumbling. "What do we do, Captain?" Carter looked around at his crew. These men had followed him into the depths, trusted him with their lives, believed in him even when he'd stopped believing in himself. They deserved the truth. 3 years ago, Carter began, his voice cracking, I followed an order that destroyed me. I've been trying to convince myself it was justified, that I made the right choice, that I was a good soldier following orders. But Webb is right. I murdered 63 people because I didn't have the courage to question my superiors." He took a deep breath. "I won't make that mistake again." Sullivan stepped forward. "Then we're with you, Captain. Whatever you decide." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crew. Carter turned to Chen. "Can you make contact with the Barracuda?" "Yes, sir. If I use Mitchell's modified frequency, the one he was using to listen to them, I can probably open a channel." "Do it. I want to talk to Captain Thorne. But even as Chen hurried back to his station, Carter was already thinking 3 steps ahead. Thorne wouldn't be persuaded. Thorne was a by-the-book officer, the kind who would follow orders into hell itself, the kind Carter used to be, which meant this was going to get worse before it got better, if it got better at all. Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. "Sir, I've got the Barracuda. Captain Thorne is on the line." Carter picked up the handset. "Thorne, this is Carter. We need to talk." The voice that came back was cold, mechanical. "Captain Carter, I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Yes, we need to talk, but not over the radio. Surface your boat. Meet me aboard the Morning Star in 30 minutes. Just you. No weapons, no tricks, or I fire on both vessels right now." The line went dead. Webb's face had gone white. "It's a trap. He'll kill you the moment you surface." "Probably," Carter agreed. "But if I don't go, he'll definitely kill everyone on that ship, and probably us too. Then I'm going with you." "No, you're staying here. If something happens to me, someone needs to protect these people." Carter looked around at his crew. "All of you. That's an order." Rodriguez shook his massive head. "With respect, Captain, screw your order. We're not letting you go alone." "Yeah," Sullivan added. "We didn't come this far just to watch you commit suicide." Carter felt something warm in his chest, something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Pride, not in himself, but in these men who stood ready to defy orders, risk everything, follow him into certain death. "All right," he said quietly. "Rodriguez, Sullivan, you're with me. The rest of you, prepare for possible combat engagement. If we're not back in 1 hour, Webb takes command. Your orders are to protect the Morning Star at all costs, even if it means firing on an American submarine. Understood?" Solemn nods around the control room. "Then let's surface this boat." The Phantom rose slowly through the dark water, her hull groaning against the pressure change. Carter stood at the periscope, watching the blackness gradually lighten to deep blue, then turquoise, then finally sunlight. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed it. The simple warmth of the sun on his face as he climbed through the hatch onto the Phantom's deck. The fresh air filling his lungs after 2 days of recycled oxygen. The vast openness of the Pacific stretching to the horizon. The Morning Star sat 300 yards away, her white hull gleaming in the afternoon light. She looked peaceful, innocent, like a ship that had no idea she was about to become a grave, and surfaced beside her, sleek and dark and menacing, the USS Barracuda. "There," Rodriguez muttered, pointing. A rigid inflatable boat was being lowered from the Barracuda, carrying 4 figures. Even at this distance, Carter could see the weapons they carried. "We're going to die, aren't we?" Sullivan said conversationally. "Probably. Good to know." They climbed into the Phantom's own inflatable, Rodriguez at the outboard motor. As they putted across the calm water toward the Morning Star, Carter studied the civilian ship more carefully. He could see faces at the railing now. Passengers, curious about the submarines that had surfaced nearby. A few waved, some took photographs. They had no idea. Captain Richard Thorne was waiting for them on the Morning Star's deck. He was younger than Carter expected, maybe 45, with the rigid posture and cold eyes of a man who'd never questioned an order in his life. "Captain Carter," Thorne said as Carter climbed aboard. No handshake offered. "You're late. Traffic was heavy 300 meters down." Thorne's expression didn't change. "You know why we're here." "I know what our orders are. I'm here to tell you we're not following them." "I see." Thorne glanced at his armed escorts, then back at Carter. "And you think you can stop me?" "I think I can try." For a long moment, the two captains stared at each other. Behind them, passengers were gathering, sensing tension even if they didn't understand its source. Carter could see her now. Rebecca Webb, wearing nurse's scrubs, standing near the bow with a group of other medical personnel. She was laughing at something someone had said, completely unaware that her own brother was in a submarine below and that these 2 men were deciding whether she lived or died. "You destroyed your career over the Santiago," Thorne said quietly. "You know that, don't you? They were never going to promote you again. Never going to give you another command. This mission, this suicide mission, this is your punishment." They want you to fail. They want you to refuse orders so they can court-martial you, prison you, erase you from naval history. I know. And you're still going to refuse? I am. Thorne nodded slowly. Good. So am I. Carter blinked. What? I said I'm refusing the order too. Thorne turned to his escorts. Stand down. Return to the Barracuda and prepare to surface all crew. We're not sinking anyone today. The escorts looked confused but obeyed, heading back toward their inflatable. Carter's mind was reeling. I don't understand. You said... I said we needed to talk. I said come unarmed. I never said I was going to follow through with those orders. Thorne's rigid expression finally cracked, showing something almost like a smile. Did you really think you were the only captain they were testing? The only one who couldn't stomach another massacre? Then why all this? Why the threats? Because I needed to know if you'd really changed, if you'd learned from the Santiago, if you'd finally found your spine. Thorne pulled out his own sidearm and then threw it over the railing into the ocean. I lost mine 2 years ago. Mission off the coast of Vietnam. Sank a fishing boat we were told was carrying weapons. It was carrying children. 53 of them. Orphans being evacuated to safety. Carter closed his eyes. God. There is no God in these waters, Carter. Just men following orders and trying to live with what they've done. Thorne looked out at the peaceful ocean. I swore after that day I'd never follow an order I knew was wrong, no matter the cost. They'll court-martial us both. They'll try. But first, they have to find us. And the Pacific is a very big ocean. Carter's mind was already working. You're talking about desertion. I'm talking about survival. For all of us. Thorne gestured to the Morning Star, to the Phantom, to the Barracuda. These ships, these crews, these passengers, they're all marked for death. The only question is whether we let that happen or whether we disappear before they can find us. Disappear where? I know an island, not on any official charts. My grandfather found it during his tours in these waters. Volcanic atoll, natural deep harbor, fresh water. We could hide there. Regroup, figure out our next move. Rodriguez, who'd been listening silently, finally spoke. And then what? We can't hide forever. No, Thorne agreed, but we can hide long enough to get evidence. Proof of what they're making us do. Mitchell died for a reason, Carter. He was collecting that proof, and I'm betting he stashed it somewhere on your boat before they killed him. Carter's heart was pounding. If we do this, if we run, we can never go home. We'll be fugitives, traitors. We're already traitors, Thorne said simply. We just haven't admitted it yet. A long silence. Then Carter turned to Rodriguez and Sullivan. Get back to the Phantom. Tell Webb what's happening. Give the crew a choice. Anyone who wants to stay with the official mission can transfer to a life raft. We'll radio their position to Pearl Harbor, but anyone who's with us needs to understand. We're ghosts now. We don't exist anymore. Aye, Captain, Rodriguez said. As they headed back to their inflatable, Carter looked out at the horizon. The sun was setting, painting the Pacific in shades of gold and crimson. Beautiful, peaceful, deceptive. Question, he said to Thorne. How do you know we can trust each other? Thorne smiled, a real smile this time. We can't, but we both know what happens if we don't try. That night, 3 ships disappeared from official naval records. The USS Phantom, the USS Barracuda, and the civilian vessel Morning Star simply vanished from radar, sonar, and satellite tracking. Search and rescue operations would find nothing, no wreckage, no debris, no bodies, just the vast, empty Pacific, keeping its secrets. Below the waves, the Phantom and Barracuda traveled in formation, escorting the Morning Star toward coordinates that didn't exist on any map. Inside the Phantom's hull, 23 men, now 22 after Mitchell's murder, prepared for an uncertain future. Carter stood in the control room, studying the charts, when Webb approached. Captain, Chen found something. In Mitchell's locker. It was a waterproof case, locked. Sullivan had to break it open. Inside, documents, photographs, audio recordings, evidence of 17 different classified missions over the past 5 years, each one targeting civilian vessels, refugee ships, humanitarian convoys. each one justified by lies about military cargo or enemy combatants, each one a massacre disguised as duty. Jesus, Webb whispered. This is proof. This could bring down half the Naval Command structure. If anyone would listen, Carter said, if anyone would care. They'd have to care about this. Chen held up one photograph. It showed a room, an office, high-ranking, judging by the furnishings. And on the wall, clearly visible, a planning board with names, dates, coordinates, including the Santiago, including the Morning Star, including the Phantom itself, and at the top of the board, written in precise military lettering, Operation Clean Slate. What does it mean? Sullivan asked. Carter stared at the photograph, his blood running cold. It means this isn't about individual missions. It's a systematic program. They're using submarines to eliminate problems, witnesses, whistleblowers, anyone who knows too much. And then they're eliminating the submarines too. No evidence, no witnesses, no trail. We were never meant to survive this mission, Webb said quietly. None of us. Rodriguez's voice was grim. How many others? How many crews have they already erased? No one answered, because they all knew the answer could be in the dozens, or hundreds. Carter picked up the radio handset. Captain Thorne, this is Carter. You need to see what we found. An hour later, both submarine captains sat in the Phantom's cramped wardroom, surrounded by evidence of their own government's crimes. The room smelled like coffee and diesel and fear. We can't run from this, Thorne said finally. This is bigger than us, bigger than our crews. If we disappear, if we hide, they win. They continue the program. More people die. And if we surface, Carter countered, if we try to expose this, they'll kill us before we reach port, or they'll discredit us, court-martial us, lock us away where no one will ever hear our story. Then we need someone who can't be silenced. Webb pulled out another photograph from the case, this one showing a journalist meeting with Mitchell in what looked like a cafe. Mitchell was working with someone on the outside, a reporter. If we can get this evidence to her, they'll kill her too, Sullivan interrupted. The moment she tries to publish. Not if she publishes everything at once, Chen said. He was the youngest in the room, but his eyes were sharp. Not if she sends it to every newspaper, every TV station, every international news agency simultaneously. Too many targets. They can't silence everyone. Thorne nodded slowly. It could work, but it means surfacing. It means risking everything. Carter looked around at his crew, these men who'd followed him into the depths, who'd chosen conscience over orders, who'd become ghosts to protect the innocent. He thought about Rebecca Webb, alive because they'd refused. He thought about the 63 souls from the Santiago, dead because he'd obeyed. We surface in 12 hours, he said. We head for Pearl Harbor. We broadcast this evidence on every frequency, and we tell the truth, all of it. What they made us do, what we refused to do, what Operation Clean Slate really is. They'll arrest us the moment we dock, Thorne warned. I know. We'll spend the rest of our lives in military prison. I know. But at least we'll spend those lives as men, Rodriguez rumbled. Not ghosts, not cowards. Carter stood. All hands, this is the captain. Prepare to surface. Set course for Pearl Harbor. And someone get me that journalist's contact information. We're about to tell the biggest story the Navy's ever tried to bury. The control room erupted in activity, but as the crew scattered to their stations, Carter remained at the chart table looking at the photograph of the Santiago, the ship he'd destroyed, the people he'd killed, the sin he'd carried for 3 years. I'm sorry, he whispered to the faces in the photo. I'm sorry I didn't question. I'm sorry I didn't fight, but I'm fighting now. I promise you that. The Phantom rose toward the light. 12 hours later, every news station in the world received the same data dump. Evidence of Operation Clean Slate, audio recordings of illegal orders, testimony from 2 submarine captains and their crews. The story broke simultaneously in 17 countries. By the time the Phantom and Barracuda reached Pearl Harbor, CNN was already broadcasting the documents. The New York Times had published a special edition. International outrage was erupting across the globe. And waiting at the dock, Not just MPs with arrest warrants, but reporters with cameras, senators demanding investigations, citizens shouting support. Captain William "Ironhand" Carter stood on the Phantom's bridge as they approached the harbor. Behind him, his crew. Beside him, Captain Thorne. Above him, the American flag still flying. "You ready for this?" Thorne asked. Carter thought about Mitchell, murdered for trying to do the right thing. He thought about the Santiago, destroyed because he'd failed to question. He thought about Rebecca Webb and 213 others, alive because he'd finally found his courage. "No," he said honestly. "But we're doing it anyway." The submarines docked. The arrests began. The trials would last for months. But Operation Clean Slate died that day, exposed to the light it could never survive. And deep in the Pacific, in the place where the Phantom had made its choice, the ocean kept no more secrets, just the memory of men who finally chose conscience over orders, honor over obedience, truth over silence. Some called them traitors, others called them heroes. Captain William Carter didn't care what they called him. He could finally sleep at night, and that was enough.